Alright, the Spear beta went live yesterday, so I decided to try and see how each profession plays with this new weapon. As per usual, I tried to stick to the Spear only, and due to having limited time, used some of the more well-established builds, although we did tinker with a couple of them. The same goes for gear, by the way. I mainly stuck to either Berserkers or Marauders with Scholar runes for power builds, and Vipers or Celestial with Trapper runes for condition builds. Whenever you make a beta character, you'll get a standard set of gear and a build, but you'll also receive a few boxes of stat selectable gear so that you can try whatever combo you can think of yourself. I'll link all of the builds in the pinned comment, as well as the meta battle equivalent, which are builds you could play on their recommended weapon sets and work really well in the open world. I didn't use any of Guildgen's builds, but go check them out as well, as they provide some great open world guides too. Before I get to the different professions, a special shout out to Moon, who provided me with some of the most fun Thief, Revenant and Mesmer builds I've ever played, including during this beta. And now let's get to the good part, and let's start with Guardian, which kinda caught me off guard, but in a good way. I opted for a Power Willbender build, which in itself brings a lot of mobility with the 3 F abilities, an Elite that teleports you to your enemy, and 2 charges of Helio Rush on Spear 2. Guardian Spear introduces the new Illuminated mechanic. If you hit an enemy with Helio Rush, with the first spin of Gleaming Disc, or when you're in range of your shards with Solar Storm, you'll empower your next ability. This will make Helio Rush heal you for more and grant boons to allies you charge through. Gleaming Disc will blind enemies while granting Fury to allies, and Solar Storm produces even more shards falling from the sky. Symbol of Luminance, which is your Spear 5, illuminates any ability you cast while you're standing inside, or even when moving out of the symbol whenever it itself is illuminated. Overall, the Guardian Spear brought great burst and enough healing to compensate for whatever mistake I was making. I often overshot Helio Rush, forgetting that you can cancel the charge by pressing the ability again. And I also soaked a bit too much unnecessary damage. When trying the weapon on the Gauntlet in a Crystal Desert, which is an event that spawns a considerable amount of enemies, followed by a champion, I was taken aback by how fast we shredded through its HP, all the while having the ability to heal back to full HP thanks to Litany of Wrath, which heals based on a percentage of damage dealt. So yeah, Guardian was amazing, which I sadly can't say about Warrior. Maybe my expectations were too high, but one of our community members summarized it appropriately by stating that the Warrior Spear has all of the problems of ranged weapons and none of the benefits of melee. I tried playing around both as a Spellbreaker and a Berserker. Spellbreaker felt clunky, mainly due to missing a permanent source of quickness. Full Counter still works just as well at range and resets the burst attack just fine, but you're missing a valuable amount of crowd control by not being next to your enemies. Arenanet themselves start you off with a Berserker build, which feels much better to play. The Primal Burst absolutely shreds through enemies and can be reset with Blood Reckoning, which Arenanet actually doesn't put on your bar by default, but I definitely recommend bringing. The problem that Berserker has is that almost all of the utility you'd want to bring once again forces you into melee range. And the rate at which adrenaline drains the moment you drop out of combat is infuriating to say the least. If 2 enemies are spaced out a little too far, you'll start a fight with 0 adrenaline. Berserk's cooldown being only 8 seconds partially compensates for this though. As you can see, the weapon does shred through enemies, especially if you can chain them together like I did in Bloodstone Fen. Spear 2, 5 and the Primal Burst inflict massive amounts of damage, and you can use Spear 3 as an extra evade. Whether the damage modifiers are good enough for group content, I'll leave up to the people making those builds. But for the open world, I was hoping for a better experience. Our final heavy armor wearer is a Revenant, and I liked it. Admittedly more due to Spear incentivizing picking up Abyssal Chill, which inflicts torment on foes you chill, which a few of the Spear abilities do. I honestly am not sure where the Spear fits in the Revenant's loadout. We already have great condition weapons with the Shortbow and Mace Axe, and while Abyssal Chill is fun, it competes with the much stronger Pact of Pain trait. For the open world, however, it's been a blast having our Vindicator dodges chill targets while channeling Malix, and spamming as many skills as we could fit in during the Alliance stance, while keeping up the stability from Reaver's Rage and Quickness and Fury from Scavenger Burst. The way the Spear abilities work is that you want to be using your Spear 5, Abyssal Raise, which has 3 charges and gets its cooldown lowered by Spear 2, 3 and 4. Both Abyssal Force and Abyssal Blood, Spear 2 and 4 respectively, inflict chill, while the former also adds a bit of agony. I'll probably play this more in the coming days, as I mainly tested this on enemies in Dragon's Fall Burning Forest, and I want to see how this holds up against enemies that put a bit more pressure on us. This one might turn out okay for the open world after all. What definitely will turn out great in the open world and potentially in group content is the Engineer. I've already seen benchmarks hitting 40k on the training golem, and in the open world we get decent mobility, good condition application and a fun mechanic. Spear 2 will make you focus a target, which is indicated by the animation above its head, while also being a dash on a short 6-second cooldown that resets every time your focus target dies. Spear 3, Lightning Rod, and Spear 5, Devastator deal great damage and even more to your focus target, while Spear 4 offers excellent crowd control. Spear on Engineer just felt great to use, regardless of whether I was zooming from enemy to enemy with Conduit Surge resets or letting my mech tank champions while inflicting bleeding, burning and maybe equally as important vulnerability. I'll probably tinker a bit more with this build and take the J Dynamo trait combined with Elixir U to help maintain quickness. The profession that probably caught me off guard the most was Thief. As per Enid's suggestion, we focused on Daredevil, and Moon provided me with a build that focused on never getting hit, and if you do, one that heals you back to full in no time. Spear 2 and 3 work with a combo system that's very reminiscent of Guild Wars 1's Assassin class. The great thing about the system is that you can mix and match the lead attacks, follow-ups and finishers, so you're not forced into choosing either Spear 2 or 3 and you can adapt to the situation on the fly. Spear 3's lead attack, Unsuspecting Strikes, offers next level mobility. Seriously, the range on this ability is borderline insane, and I feel like the Spear doesn't suffer as much from frequent animation locks like the Staff does. The general combos you want to keep in mind for the build being showcased are 3-2-2 for damage and 3-3-3 for sustain. Vampiric Slash, which is Spear 3's follow-up, lets you steal a good amount of HP from your enemy, and Shattering Assault, which is Spear 3's finisher, grants you stealth if you need a moment of reprieve. Spear 2's follow-up and finisher just inflicts good amounts of bleeding and poison. Combining all of this with the Daredevil's ability to dodge while inflicting even more conditions, you can get into the flow of using Spear 3 as a gap closer, followed by Spear 2's follow-up and finisher, and then dodge backwards, which will inflict even more bleeding and torment before starting over the cycle again. The other traits either further empower your dodges by letting them inflict more conditions and regenerate your initiative every time you dodge, while also granting you regeneration for some extra healing. You could probably replace acrobatics with deadly arts for higher DPS, but this worked just great honestly. I actually had so much fun on this build, I didn't even get to the 2 other elite specs yet, but I'm definitely looking forward to trying Spectre next. Our final medium armor profession is the Ranger, and I'm really conflicted about this one. Once again, if the numbers are tuned correctly, I can see this working in group content, especially as a weapon you swap to, burn through the cooldowns and the combos, and then swap back to something else. Sticking to the spear only didn't feel good at all, but the moment I combined the spear with dual maces, things started flowing. I've tried both a Soul Beast and an Untamed build, and I could come up with a case for both. I do believe that Untamed is one of the best builds in the open world right now, as it allows you to do ludicrous amounts of damage and also provides you with next level sustain. The way Ranger Spear works is that you have a normal and a stealthed version of your abilities 2 through 5. The stealthed versions are more powerful, with Spear 2, Wolf's Onslaught dealing more damage, Spear 3, Owl's Flight becoming an unblockable projectile, Spear 4, Predator's Ambush dealing more damage when your target is below 50% HP, and Spear 5, Spider's Web immobilizing and crippling enemies while granting your pet super speed. The Untamed Ambush was actually pretty fun, as it deals damage in a cone and spawns a spore, which you might know from the Exploding Spores utility under any target you hit. That brings us to our light armor wearers, and let's start by taking a look at the Necromancer, which just felt great. That's all I got. Spear on Necros feels great. I played a standard Power Reaper build, which helps maintain might and quickness, and is strong regardless of what weapon you would choose to bring. Necros get access to yet another unique mechanic called Soul Shards. Every time you finish your auto attack chain or you use abilities 3 through 5, you will get one or more of these, and they can be consumed with Spear 2, Perforate, which further improves that ability. Some of the spear skills also interact with each other. Spear 4, Isolate, will flip over into Distress, which can teleport you to your enemy, which in itself is pretty great. But Isolate also recharges Perforate, so you can cast Spear 2, follow up with Spear 4, and then 2 again. Going in and out of your Shroud will reset Isolate, turning this into a potential combo of using Perforate, Isolate, Perforate again, use your Shroud to then Isolate and Perforate once more. Swords already provided Necromancers with some much needed mobility, and Spear seems to be following suit. I do wonder what people think about all of this teleporting in World v World or PvP though. As I said, Necromancer spears are great, but Mesmer ones are amazing. Mesmer Spear was so much fun, I wanted to try it with all 3 specs. The Power Virtuoso and Chrono are nothing new, but worked great with a spear. Moon also sent me a Mirage build that was meant to be used with both a spear and a staff, but I decided to only stick to the former. I am not the biggest fan of Chronomancers for general open world gameplay, as tools like Continuum Shift might get wasted unless you're fighting higher health enemies and they're on a pretty long cooldown as well. But that's personal preference. Power Virtuoso on the other hand ticks every single box. Much like Necromancers, Mesmer Spear abilities interact with each other. Spear 2, Mind the Gap, creates a clone and grants you a new buff called Clarity. Clarity empowers Spear 3 to not only heal you, but also remove conditions, Spear 4 to summon 2 phantasms instead of 1, and Spear 5 to also stun any foe struck. When you use Mental Collapse, which is Spear 5, you will reset Mind the Gap. This creates a nice loop of using Mind the Gap followed by Mental Collapse, then Mind the Gap again followed by your Phantasmal Lancer. This combo will grant you might, stun your enemies, spawns an extra phantasm, all the while dealing incredible damage. And let's not forget about Spear 3, Imaginary Inversion, which heals you when you successfully evade an attack with it, which adds some welcome survivability. I absolutely fumbled with the Mirage build, but despite me failing to bring out its strengths, I could comfortably face tank champions. I'll definitely need to play around with it more to actually bring out its strengths, but the gist of it is that it deals good power damage, melting anything with low HP, and the conditions will take over on strong enemies thanks to the traits that apply Torment and Confusion. I deliberately kept Elementalist still last, as I rarely play Weaver and I don't feel like I could offer anything of value. As per the community recommendation, I did try Spear on a Fresh Air Tempest, which worked remarkably well, but by doing so, I gave up on one of the weapon's strengths by being in melee range the whole time. I could see some fun open world combos with the Catalyst Elite ability that resets all abilities, allowing you to cast double etchings, which are those gorgeous circles you draw on the ground, which also make sure that you have no clue when an enemy AoE is placed underneath you. The etching system is pretty cool though. Once you hit Spear 5 in any element, you'll etch a spell into the ground, which can flip over into a lesser or fully powered ability. To unlock the flipover's full potential, you'll have to use 3 skills. This is rather easy to do, as the Tempest Overload works, as well as Spear 3 being an instant cast, and your utilities also counting towards the total. I definitely have my work cut out for me on an Elementalist by the time the expansion releases, as I don't want to leave it at this. But overall, I'm pretty happy with most of the builds I get to play so far. Spear sometimes suffers from feeling clunky without quickness, but that is true for most of the weapon sets nowadays. ArenaNet making the boon mandatory in group content can sometimes make the open world feel sluggish, which is why I usually stick to professions and builds that can maintain 100% self-uptime of quickness. Although I have to say I didn't really miss the boon on specs like Daredevil or even the Virtuoso. I'll probably try more builds on stream in the coming days, and I'll also see if I can organize a couple of strikes and maybe even a raid wing clear with 10 spear wielders just for the fun of it. It'd help me out tremendously if you could like the video and subscribe to the channel. We're starting to inch closer to that 10k subscriber mark, which is a goal I've set my mind to.